The story of Warrant doesn't really begin with fame. It begins with five young musicians in Los Angeles who believed stubbornly that loud guitars and unforgettable hooks could break them out of obscurity. In 1984, guitarist Eric Turner started assembling a band with one goal: survive the chaos of the Sunset Strip long enough to matter. The LA scene at the time was overcrowded. Bands like Mötley Crüe and Poison had already set the bar for glam metal excess, and every club was packed with groups trying to chase the same dream. Turner's early version of Warrant went through lineup shifts, false starts, and the usual grind of rehearsal rooms and unpaid gigs. But things began to solidify when bassist Jerry Dixon, guitarist Joey Allen, drummer Stephen Sweet, and vocalist-songwriter Jani Lane locked in as the core. That lineup changed everything, the songwriter who changed the band's DNA. Jani Lane wasn't just a singer dropped into a band. He became the emotional engine. While many Sunset Strip bands leaned heavily into image, Lane brought something sharper: storytelling. He wrote songs that felt like diary entries wrapped in the stadium-sized choruses: Love Gone Wrong, Youth Slipping Too Fast, and the strange mix of confidence and insecurity that defined the era. With Lane, Warrant stopped sounding like just another glam act. They started sounding like a band that understood the people in the crowd. The climb through the Sunset Strip. Warrant's rise wasn't instant. They played clubs like the Whiskey A Go-Go and the Troubadour, building a reputation one chaotic night at a time. The competition was brutal. Every band had big hair, tight jeans, and louder-than-life personalities. But Warrant had two advantages: hooks that stuck after one listen, a frontman who could turn vulnerability into an anthem. By the late 80s, record labels began circling. Breakthrough, Dirty, Rotten, Filthy, Stinking Rich. 1989. Their debut album exploded out of nowhere. Songs like Down Boys and Heaven didn't just get airplay, they dominated MTV. Heaven, in particular, showed their range. Beneath the Glam image was a power ballad that hit harder emotionally than anyone expected. It climbed charts and turned Warrant into mainstream stars almost overnight. Suddenly, the band that had been fighting for club gigs was touring nationally. Peak fame, Cherry Pie, 1990. If their debut introduced them, Cherry Pie defined them. The title track became one of the most recognizable rock songs of the decade. Loud, playful, and impossible to escape, it turned Warrant into household names. MTV rotation was constant. Stadium crowds shouted every word. But success came with pressure. The record label wanted another hit just like it. The band wanted to evolve. That tension would shape everything that followed. The turning point beneath the glitter. Behind the scenes, cracks were forming. The glam metal world was starting to shift. By the early 90s, a new sound was rising out of Seattle. Grunge bands that rejected glam excess entirely. The industry began pivoting almost overnight. For Warrant, this meant their biggest strength, flashy, polished anthems, suddenly felt out of fashion. They responded with albums like Dog Eat Dog, 1992, which showed a darker, more serious tone. Critics noted the maturity, but the audience was changing faster than the band could adapt. Identity crisis and survival. The mid to late 90s were difficult. The band continued touring, releasing music, and rebuilding their identity. But the cultural spotlight had moved on. Inside the group, there were struggles, creative disagreements, lineup changes, and the weight of trying to remain relevant in a world that had rewritten the rules. Still, they never disappeared. Warrant became something else. A legacy act, yes, but also a band that refused to quietly fade away. The legacy of Jani Lane. Much of Warrant's identity will always be tied to Jani Lane, whose songwriting defined their peak. His later years were marked by personal struggles, but his influence on rock songwriting remains undeniable. Songs like Heaven continue to resonate because they captured something universal: the emotional contradiction of youth, feeling invincible and lost at the same time. Warrant today, even decades later, Warrant still tours and performs, often reconnecting with audiences who grew up with their music. Their songs have become part of the fabric of late 80s rock nostalgia, played at festivals, on classic rock radio, and in crowds that still know every lyric. What remains is not just a glam metal band, but a snapshot of an era when music was larger than life, when MTV could make a band overnight, and when 5 musicians from Los Angeles managed to turn ambition, chaos, and melody into something unforgettable.